Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is John Harper, Vice President, Global Sales, Luxury and Leisure at Marriott International. And I have the privilege of interviewing Colin Cowie, CEO of Colin Cowie Lifestyle, on how safely host events without compromising on guest experience. I'll also be giving insight on Marriott International's approach to meetings and events, particularly with our luxury portfolio. Today's webinar is brought to you by Cvent. Jeff Emenecker, Senior Director, Analytics, Cvent, will give you insights on what lies ahead of group business.
Thanks so much, and welcome to our webinar, The Return of Events, sponsored by Cvent. As mentioned, I'm Jeffrey Emenecker, Senior Director of Analytics here at Cvent, and I'm going to give you a brief update on the latest trends we're seeing with group business before getting to the main portion of our program. So very high level, good news is that RFP volumes from planners are on their way back up after the blip we saw with Delta. We were doing really well from a volumes perspective, kind of going into July and through most of July. And then we definitely took a bit of a step back in terms of sourcing behavior in August and September, I should say, probably about a 10 to 15% drop. But late in September and here early into October, we're definitely seeing volumes kind of pick back up again. You can see that in a little bit more detail on this slide, which shows the weekly relative volume of RFPs being sourced on our system. And you'll notice that, in August and September, we kind of took a dip over there to the right where you can see kind of things went down, but you'll notice now things are starting to kind of pick back up again and getting to levels that we haven't seen since March of 2020. So definitely kind of headed back in the right direction. And we also see some positive trends from a conversion perspective. So when we speak about conversion, and what we're kind of showing on this chart is kind of the relative amount of RFPs that are sourced on the network that are ultimately awarded to a venue or venues. And the blue line represents kind of what we are seeing this year by week. The yellow line represents what we saw in those same weeks in 2019. And what you can see kind of going over to the left is for much of this year, conversion was actually stronger than we have historically seen. Once Delta hit kind of here in August and September, we definitely saw a drop, but you'll notice that that blue line is starting to kind of creep back up again. Well, I would expect it to pass what we were seeing in 2019 soon. So definitely took a little bit of a blip in terms of conversion, but things seem to be headed back in a positive direction. Another interesting trend is what's happening kind of with booking windows. So they have been falling steadily for about 6 months, where the events being sourced are closer and closer to the dates obviously being sent out by RFPs. We typically see on our network about 180 days for booking windows, and they were well up over 200 earlier this year. They've dropped all the way down to about 140 to 150 days recently. So a lot more planners are sourcing business for near term than they would historically. Another interesting trend that we're seeing, and we're kind of highlighting some markets here on the slide, is that a lot of the tertiary or secondary markets, those that tend to get a lot of leisure travel as well, are markets that have performed well throughout COVID and continue to do so. What we're measuring here is which markets have grown their share of business in this most recent month of September relative to what they did back in September of 2019. And you'll notice here, not a lot of urban markets, not markets that are traditionally the biggest markets from a volume perspective. Those are the markets that have done well throughout COVID and continue to do well. And it's going to be interesting to see if kind of going forward, those markets continue to kind of get more share than they would traditionally get before the pandemic hit. Looking a little bit at rates in terms of what hotels are proposing on events in the future. Here, what we're showing is how rates for specific arrival date ranges in the future differ from the same time in 2019. And what you'll notice is that there's a little bit of discounting going on. The rates being proposed right now for very near-term events is a little bit lower than it was back in 2019. But as soon as we get into next year, you'll notice things kind of move in a positive direction where rates are up year over year. And so, overall, as this recovery happens, one positive note is that we've gotten back to where we were from a rate perspective, and even more so relatively quickly, but very positive for everybody. One last data point things when we're talking about kind of the future of events and where things are headed. Certainly hybrid events is an area that's getting a lot of discussion. And one interesting trend that we've seen so far, and is demonstrated in this chart, is that kind of irrespective of the arrival date of events, what we're typically seeing is that events that are hybrid are larger events than those that are just in person. Not surprisingly so, but in general, what we're definitely seeing is that it's the larger events are the ones where people feel a more positive outcome coming from the addition of virtual attendees. So definitely, again, obviously near-term events are going to be smaller. Those that are further out are going to be larger. But in all cases, we're really seeing that the larger the meeting, the more likely it is that the planner is going to be interested in more of a hybrid approach. We expect this to continue and probably even grow over time. I think we'll see a larger and larger percentage of events that are hybrid. But certainly those larger events are the ones where that hybrid component is much more prevalent. So I want to thank you just for that kind of brief overview. Now for the main part of our discussion, John Harper, Vice President of Global Sales, Luxury and Leisure at Marriott International, will be interviewing Colin Cowie, CEO of Colin Cowie Lifestyle, on best practices for hosting events in a dynamic environment. John will also be sharing some insights on Marriott's Connect with Confidence program, a global initiative by Marriott Bonvoy Events. Thanks so much and take it away.
So let's get started with today's discussion on the return of events. So Colin, the first question would like to ask you as we get started here is the last 20 months have been all about adapting, especially for those of us in the hospitality and meeting business. How have you had to pivot and adapt during this time?
So John, it's a very interesting story. In mid-February, I got married in South Africa. I had an enormous wedding, went on an incredible honeymoon, got back to New York, and 4 days later, we were in lockdown. And then within the next week, I literally saw millions and millions and billions of dollars of business get postponed or canceled, or we'll deal with it another time. So it was a rather dismal entry back into the US after an extraordinary event in South Africa. But I got really smart really quickly, and utilizing many of my team and our producers and our art department, I realized that, having worked in the past as creative director for NetJets and for certain hotels and hospitality, I'd done this work, but I'd never really put it under an umbrella and given it a name. So I started Thrive Hospitality. I reached out to 3 big developers that had purchased large resorts that were in the process of refurbishing and upgrading the resorts. And they were all in Southern Florida. I was able to get on a plane and come down here. I closed the deal. And 6 weeks later, I had a home and a new office in Miami. Fast forward, and I now have 3 of those projects, which will last me for the next 2 to 3 years. We're doing everything from interior design to programming to banqueting. I basically work as the creative director, looking to create incredible guest experiences and these amazing touch points for our clients. So it was an incredible pivot for me. I had no idea it would be so successful or so busy. So basically out of my darkest moment came a very bright light. And in the last 6 to 8 weeks, it's been incredibly busy again. I mean, the world has come back with a vengeance. And every bride wants to get married. Love doesn't wait for anyone, and love certainly never goes out of style. So with only a certain amount of Saturdays in the year, Thursdays and Sundays are the new Saturday.
Yeah, that's it's very exciting, and it's great to see that. And I agree with you, the way that things have come back and booming back so rapidly. We're certainly seeing that in many parts around the globe.
So John, how Marriott adapted from a meetings and events perspective?
Yeah, it's been quite interesting. I'll talk a little bit about the luxury side of it. I think that the first thing is that we've realized is that we've always known how important it is for meeting and events to happen, but when they were taken away from us for a period of time, we now realize that they're critical for us. They're critical to have a wedding. It's critical to have social events. It's critical to have a meeting. We've always known that, but we've really felt it now. And so I think our goal all along has been, through this process, is to try to create the confidence to our customers for them to come to our hotels and have meetings and events, and that we have the right protocols and processes in place to make every guest feel comfortable. And I think probably the most difficult part about it is, and everyone will relate with this, is that it's not one size fits all, as you well know, in your business. It's about the personalization, the creativity, and customizing each event to make sure that obviously you're following the guidelines which you need to do for each destination. But how do you make sure that people feel like they are going to have the right experience based on their point of view and where they're coming from and what they need in an event? And so we have put a lot of time around really understanding and meeting with each of our customers and what's important to them. And how do we then personalize the experience to what's really going to make sure that the event's going to be successful? We've done a lot of meetings and events, believe it or not, throughout this entire time. And what we've learned is that it really is the personality of the organization that you really need to understand. In the past, you could say certain industries or certain segments would all behave in a similar way. But today, companies are behaving in the way that that company wants to behave for that meeting, and what they need out of that meeting is very unique. In order to find out what that is, you need to ask questions and really sit with them and come up with a really nice plan and strategy to make sure what you deliver is personalized and customized on what they're looking for, because everybody enters a hotel or venue today really wanting something that's very customized and personalized to them, not just one size fits all. So our biggest challenge has been, making sure that we do adapt by spending the time and really putting together a program and an event that's going to create an experience that not only just meets the expectation, goes above and beyond. And so that's been really interesting to see. And today, that's happening, at a much higher volume. I mean, we are really seeing the uptick in events, and it's been very, very encouraging. And we think that's going to continue certainly into the future. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through. So good. So with that, Colin, I have my next question for you as we go through the questions here. Your business is focused on working with clients to create memorable customer experiences. What advice would you give both clients and hoteliers on how to create exceptional experiences in this environment?
John, while I was in the pandemic, I finished writing my 11th book, my first business book, and I called it The Gold Standard, giving your customers what they didn't know they wanted. So I'm really laser focused on customer service right now. I think it is the new currency, and I think that in a very crowded space, this is how we stand out, because at the end of the day, we've got one goal, not only booking an event, but to create that emotional connection with that person so that they will continue to be loyal to us, they're less price sensitive, they tell their friends about us, they love receiving information from us. So what I'm really focused on is like, how do we use all this data and information that's available to us to customize a personal experience? And I think the idea and the goal here is to deliver proactive customer service, where we can use information that we find on the internet or we find on your social media pages to be able to craft something that is really going to resonate with you. And the big picture is, how do we anticipate the unanticipated needs of that guest? And when we're able to do that and have that surprise element and that surprise factor in there, those are the things that really solidify the relationships. And those are the things that we do today to stand out in the crowd. I think that's what we need, because we know that everyone's had a lot of time to sit, a lot of time to think, a lot of time on their hands, and people are shopping. There's no question about it. I used to close 80% of any deal that walked into my office. I would close that deal. Today, my closing rate is 50%. It's because people are smart, they're shopping around, they're looking for deals, they're going from one place to the next place, being bounced around. So we really need to figure out, how do we own that transaction? How do we own that customer? How do we keep them loyal to us? And so I use all the touch points, and I call it the customer seduction, because it's about using what you smell, touch, taste, feel, and hear to craft an experience that's going to resonate with them. And there's so many great examples of this. Someone was on an aeroplane and couldn't find Pepsi Cola and tweeted about it. By the time he got to the hotel in Paris and walked into his hotel, there was an ice bucket filled with all of his Diet Pepsis. And it was just a question of someone looking for opportunity to be able to resonate and to create that incredible guest experience. And guess how many people he told about that? Or there's a picture of someone, from a family member or a dog or your favorite pet or something that's in a silver frame next to the bed when you check in. Or the customized, if you are traveling with an animal and you actually find out what the name of the dog is because you went online to find that, you're looking for opportunity to create those emotional connections that are going to solidify our relationships and stand out in the crowd.
Yeah, that's why I love the title of your new book. Because it's exactly summarizes that, you're creating something that people aren't really expecting. A lot of times it may not even cost a lot of money to do that. It's having your radar on and understanding exactly what you need to do to deliver the unexpected and create a wow moment. And so love to hear the Pepsi example. And in our business, that's what luxury is all about with events and meetings. It's about having an experience. You know what you're going to get when you walk into a luxury hotel. You know what you walk into when you go to a nice event. But how do you have them leave with some sort of a mark or a memory that they didn't expect, that wowed them, that they take back? And so when they're on the plane and they sit back and they close their eyes and they're heading home, they're like, wow, that just happened. And I didn't know that was going to happen. And now I have something I can take with me that is very, very valuable. And that's what we have to continue to create, because that's what luxury experiences around the globe are all about. It's not about a transactional event. It's about something that you create together that ends up becoming exceptional and really unexpected. And so I love to hear that your experiences and examples of that, because it's very inspiring, and we're very aligned that way, because that's what it's all about.
The other thing that you mentioned, luxury. So I think we ask ourselves, what is luxury today? Luxury for me used to come in an orange box with a brown saddle stitch ribbon, and you got so excited, or maybe it was a blue box with a white satin ribbon. I don't think luxury is a product anymore. I think, those boxes we can find in train stations, airports, and we can buy them online. So it no longer is a luxury experience. So for me, I'm defining luxury today. It's about how I make you feel. And I think that luxury is when what you smell, touch, taste, see, and hear are all in harmony and you want for nothing. That is luxury.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And even if you think about, the leisure travel for today has been, our luxury hotels have been pleasantly surprised with how much leisure travel there has been, particularly in the luxury space. And again, it goes back to a little bit what I said earlier. Travel used to be, we always knew it was important. We always loved to do it. But when it was taken away from us, it has moved up on the list as like, we need to have travel in our lives. And I think the experience that you gain from traveling, attending an event, and that, to your point, it's not a box, but it's something that's deeper than that you hold inside of you and your family, your friends, everybody you're traveling with, that no one can ever take away. That is so very, very special. And if luxury properties and luxury experiences around the globe can really elevate that and enhance it and make it even stronger and better, it's just great for our industry and great for the future. So fully agree. My next question for you, Colin, is how important has the voice of the customer been in the process? And what have you learned working with your clients?
I think the client is much smarter. The client is a lot more savvy. The client is very focused on what they're looking for. They're shopping around. They're speaking to 3 or 4 people. And I believe, the first person with their foot in the door is the one that's going to end up with the project. It's interesting because we all live in New York nanoseconds today. We want information immediately. We've gone to the deal where if anybody signs onto our website with an inquiry, an alarm goes off and someone responds within 30 minutes. Because it's so saturated out there. There are so many people offering similar products. And it's we get in there and then we have to figure out how do we stand out in that crowd. And the client today is looking for something different. Safety, I think, is one of the biggest factors right now. They all want to know, and definitely I find that a lot of our events have become smaller. There's certain events that we do for clients with 350 people became 150 people. Incredibly focused on being as outdoors as much as we possibly can. And if we were indoors, proof of vaccination, in addition to making sure that every single person, every staff member, every musician, every person on the roster was tested upon arrival at the venue, went into a holding area and then went inside. And I think so the big thing for me is safety. And people will come back and people will have events. And we played around with some fun things, you know, we did a large event about 8 months ago when people were just starting to get confident to go out again. And we did 3 different bracelets. So the first bracelet was, we're not all vaccinated yet, stay away from me, respect the social distancing. The second colored bracelet was, you know, I'm a lot more casual and a bit more relaxed than everybody else. And the third one was, I've been vaccinated, bring on the hugs. So I think we're finding all these different mechanisms to make sure that we find safety for the client. But I think that probably is the most important message that I'm hearing from people. And then, of course, on top of that, they're looking for the extraordinary. Remember, people have been shut down for the last 20 months. They haven't had a place to go to. I actually spoke at a live event in New York last Wednesday. I said to everybody, it was so nice to make sure that the lower half of my outfit matched the top half of my outfit because I'm speaking to a real audience for a change. So everybody's got this desire to get out there and to get back. And I think it's just, that's why we're so incredibly busy right now. And I've noticed it particularly September and October, the amount of interest in calls, in people who are shopping around. It's time to get back to business. Our biggest problem at the moment is the supply chain.
Right.
We'll talk further about that.
Okay, so yes.
Okay, so how about for a hotel company like Marriott? How have you partnered with event planners and what insights have you gained?
Yeah, thank you. It's we recently about a little over a month ago hosted an event with 800 customers in Florida. We called it our Connect with Confidence event, and it was 800 people total. And so, we planned it before then, but it's roughly around the time of the event, right before, is when there was a pretty big spike in COVID cases in Florida, and there's a bit of a concern: should we go forward and move forward with this event? And what I thought was pretty fascinating was that we got pretty overwhelmed by our customers saying, please do not cancel, please have this event, because we need to go to an event and to show that it can happen, to build confidence in our own organizations. And so one thing that we've learned pretty clearly is that, companies are not all acting the same. They may be in the same industry, selling the same similar products in the same location, and one may be having 20 meetings this month, and the other one may not have a meeting till next year. And so each company has a very different, point of view on whether or not they're going to meet, how they're going to meet, how many people they're going to be meeting. It's very random, and it goes back to what I said earlier. It's very personal to each of the organization. And so our goal has been for those that are waiting to meet and getting ready to have an event. How do we give them the confidence and expose them to how it works and how it feels? Because when you go into your first event, and I went to my first event, and I've been traveling a lot now, going to a lot of events. After you go to the first one, you have a lot more confidence that, the hotels are really good at this. The transportation companies are good at it. The airplanes are good at it. You can actually go and execute an event and feel really good about it. So the number one thing was us really getting customers to have the confidence. And that event was a huge success. And we have booked business from that event because they went back to their companies and said, Marriott just did this. There were 800 people here and it was flawless. And we have all the confidence now that we can go forward. So that's what we've been doing. The other thing, and I know we'll talk a little bit about it as we go through this conversation, but I'm very excited about some of the new things that have kind of new ways to structure events and new activities, and how do you change events and evolve events based on the pandemic that may be sustainable long term. So for instance, in Aspen, we at the St. Regis there, we will now do these small igloos of 4 or 5 people on the hillside, and have all on the hillside, all lit up, all like, so when you look at it on the hillside, it looks amazing, but you have these small little private intimate dinners all spread out everywhere, which we had to do because that's what you had to do through the pandemic, but that'll probably be sustainable for a while. And so I think it's exciting that we get people to have the confidence to meet, but then let's take it a whole nother level. What have we learned from today that actually is going to help us improve and evolve our events and meeting strategies so that we can end up even delivering, creating more exceptional experiences for our guests. And that's what I get most excited about, because I think that's going to happen from this, and look forward to seeing that, especially with all the creativity that's out there. And then, okay, so my next one, Colin, for you is, again, we talked about your book, The Gold Standard, giving your customers what they didn't know they wanted, which I love, is details a clear strategy for businesses on all levels to create memorable customer experiences. Can you tell us about some of what they can expect to learn?
So sure. So the reason I wrote the book, John, was, and I'm sure you agree with me, and I started this pre-pandemic, was that we live in a very crowded and a saturated space. We don't need another product. We don't need another service. We don't need another piece of technology, or for that matter, we don't need another app. Right? The whole key was, how do we stand out in the crowd? And then what happened was the pandemic came, and our businesses changed. For a lot of people, the product changed, the voice changed, the working situation changed. Some people working hybrid, some people were in an office, some people were not in an office. And I focused first on those, is like, how do you make sure that your company has a rich culture, and how do we all get aligned? You know, what is your vision? And I teach you how to create a mission statement. How do you create those guiding principles so that we can have a plan? We can move toward, with the captain, with the plan, with the ship all headed in the right direction. So that's what, first and foremost, to like set the table. And then the key really is, like, there are 2 types of service in this world. There's reactive service. When something goes wrong, we put up our hand, and if you show the right amount of attention to detail and you do it correctly, you can buy yourself some customer loyalty. And I think probably 95% of the Earth's service providers provide reactive service. The whole key to me with this was, how do we deliver proactive service where we can anticipate the unanticipated needs of what that guest might be? And I do that by teaching us, how do we make sure that it's very personalized? People want to hear their name. They want to see their name written. They want to hear the name repeated in the conversation. They want to receive handwritten notes. These are the things of, how do we create that personal connection with you? That opens the door. And then showing extreme attention to detail, to anything and everything that you do. Make sure that it stands out. And then talk about, in the service module, how do we add this filter of elegance to everything that we do? Because the moment you add that filter of elegance, you naturally elevate the style of what someone's going to receive. And then realizing that none of this happens without teamwork and communication. And how do we work as a team, and how do we communicate to set up not only the external customer for success, but the person who's sitting in the room next to you, and to create a culture that's rich within the office, so we communicate and work together as a very tight team. And then realizing that when it comes to service, the key here is all about consistency. You have to do it right every single time, or even better the next time. Because the moment you don't, we've lost confidence with everyone, and then you don't stand for anything. And the only way we get that consistency is by having the right protocols in place. So I have a lot of protocols and areas and tools in which we use to measure and make sure that we're accountable. For instance, I was creative director for NetJets. This was pre-pandemic, a long time ago, actually pre the last crash. And I was asked to create the most luxurious brand in the world with the best treasure chest of private jets. And I thought, well, this will be easy to do. And I focused on Gloria Piana cashmere blankets and the incredible outfits and the champagne offering and the beverage offering and the interiors of the planes. And I realized it had nothing to do with this. It was all about customer service. And that I need to focus on what the guest experience was. And I had to communicate with pilots who thought they were God. They got on, they made a left-hand turn in the cockpit and weren't interested in what was happening behind. And before we're doing this, you'd have a pilot walk into a crowded FB on a Friday morning and say, who's flying to San Diego? With his dark glasses on. That certainly wasn't luxury. So I came up with this thing called the 3 5s. where I will speak to you using pilot's language, right? So 5 things we do in preparation of the service, the five things we do in preparation of the service, the 5 things we do while we're live, and the 5 things that we do post. So case an example, I wanted to make sure that across 5 continents, wherever our planes landed to pick you up, you were greeted the same way. So we text you a photograph of Mr. Smith. Okay, you were able to visually identify him. You wore your hat. You did not have dark glasses. You were not chewing gum. Your top button was done. You had a business card in your left hand. At 10 feet, you broke a smile. At 5 feet, you put out your hand and you made the introduction. And that's where I was able to make sure I got those first 5 things. I've made my first impression. Then the second 5 were, let's get you to the plane. Let's get you on the plane. Let's get you comfortable. Let's review the flight plan with you. Let's review the catering. Come back, check on with you mid-flight. Come back, check with you 10 minutes before we land to let you know what the ground transportation is. So those were the middle 5 things. They got a tick of everything. And the last 5 were report, reset, and regroup. What information did we learn? What did we hear? What did the client say that we could use that information to create a better service next time around? And how did we report anything that needed to be repaired or regrouped going onwards? So the 3 5s are a very, very powerful tool. And I use them in all of our projects, hospitality, events, et cetera, because it gives somebody something to do and it creates a chain where everyone is set up for success for the next trip that comes on board. So that's a real important part of the book. I focus a lot on why failure is important. Because, you know, I always use the analogy of when you're riding on a surfboard on the crest of the wave, we're not learning, we're taking pictures and we're talking about all the great things we do. But the moment you fall off that board and you're treading water, that's when you learn. And all of us who work with customer-facing situations, you know, the power of that 1-minute apology is so incredibly important. We all come across our rate situations, you know, and particularly in the hotel industry and the airline industry, whether it's a union, a mechanical fault, a catering fault, a weather fault, 1,000 things could go wrong. But have all our people really been given the right tools to make sure that they know how to sincerely apologize? And how do you diffuse a situation when you've got a volatile person standing opposite you and assume responsibility and then recover and understand that at this point, it's not important who's right or who's wrong. It's just that we get to the other side. We can figure out afterwards how to prevent that from ever happening again. And then, of course, the important thing for me in the book is so many people have said to me, when are we going back? When's it coming back? Well, the answer is it's never coming back. And we're never going back. There's no future in the past. Don't look left, don't look right, look straight ahead, because that's where we're headed, and that's where we should be focused, in a nutshell.
No, look, I mean, it's music to my ears because it's spot on, and you know, the balance between the consistency piece and having that consistent experience is critical, but also making sure that you create the ability to have the mystique and the wow and the unexpected to be delivered on top of that is what it's about. It's not one or the other. Those two have to go together, and that's what you so well articulated. So thank you for that. So the next question, I know the answer, but I think I'm gonna ask it anyways. But are you optimistic for the future of this industry, and what is your vision for future of events?
I'm exceptionally optimistic, and not only am I optimistic, but we're seeing it and feeling it. You know, we had this almost 20-month hiatus. You cannot hold human nature back. You know, we were designed to socialize. We're designed to spend quality time with one another. And I think that's what's so important right now. And that's why everybody wants to have parties and events. And I used the analogy earlier, love never goes out of style and love never waits for anyone. So we've got brides and grooms booking with us way into late part of 2023. And there are not enough Saturdays, you know, all of a sudden Thursday and Sunday have become the new Saturday. And I think people want to not only have events, but they want to travel again. This summer, I went to Europe for 6 weeks. I hadn't gone for such a long time. It was incredible to really go and see what the rest of the world are doing and to discover. And I think as far as events are concerned, we're seeing the events are certainly a little smaller. We see people's safety is number one. You know, some people a vaccine is good enough, for some people it's a vaccine plus a test taken at the event for that matter. So we're seeing a lot of really interesting idiosyncrasies from what makes the client happy. I think food service has become very interesting. And I was looking for new ways of, well, first I've never liked buffets. I think they're terrible. I like food stations where there's a limited amount of food paired with a certain beverage and have 10 of those around versus everything on one table, which brings out the worst behavior in everyone. So I started doing very unique food stations, and then I started working with girardons, you know, those of classic trolleys from the 1950s, and would send one through a lobby, you know, doing gazpacho service and afternoon tea, and then serving cocktails in the evening, and late night dark chocolate and red wine. So there's all interesting ways of doing things that are new and different. And I think at the end of the day, safety is probably the most important part of it. But the biggest challenge that we're having is the supply chain. You know, you can imagine, for instance, the rental company that we all rely on, that was doing $100 million in revenue pre-COVID with 4,000 staff, they've got 800 people right now who are working around the clock. So you've got to put your order in almost a month in advance. There's no change orders. There's no, well, we forgot something. Can you send us another truck? There are no delivery people there. There are no casual staff. Working on our events right now, we're working 10 times harder than what we've ever worked because of the supply chain. We can't find equipment. We can't find casual labor. And then even with the service, you know, what happened to all the waiters? What happened to all the people that used to work with us on a casual basis? You know, I think that I'm sure that many of them were working on visas and they went back to their countries. I think some of them used their unemployment and stimulus checks to trade cryptocurrency, and they've retired to live in their homes. But finding labor, I would say that the biggest challenge that we have today is labor. Other than that, it's all systems go at 120 miles an hour in all lanes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it totally makes sense, and agree. I think it's things are coming back so quickly, and just keeping up with it is a lot, and for all the reasons that you mentioned. So hopefully we'll get there quickly, because we need to get there quickly, and things will loosen up from a supply chain and from obviously a staffing point of view. The next question I have is one that is interesting. In how do you feel consumer behavior has evolved? And we touched on a little bit earlier, but you know, how has it evolved, the human behavior, and what's here to stay? What do you think is going to be a sustainable behavior as we go forward?
Well, the interesting thing was, I very well remember very ignorantly telling my teams of people back 20 months ago that, don't worry, I think this is going to go away as quickly as it came. How wrong was I? So we've learned, you know, those of us who are vaccinated feel safe to move about. Those of us who wear masks when we're out and about, we do all the things that are required of us. There are a lot of people that have chosen not to do that. So I would imagine the biggest thing for all of our clients is safety, more than anything else. And this is not going away. So it's how do we live with it? And yes, we've learned, and the airlines have proven to us. I remember the first plane I got on from Miami to New York, there were 6 people on the plane. I've been away every single weekend for the last 6 weeks, and every single plane I've been on has not had one vacant seat. So we've learned that we're comfortable with flying now. We've learned that the cars can drive us from the airport to our hotels. We figured out that the hotels are doing a really good job of making us feel welcome, safe, and to enjoy luxury again. So I think basically what is here to stay is the fact that we're going to live with this pandemic for a while. It hasn't gone anywhere, but human spirit has not held us back. It'll find ways to always morph and continue to evolve, that we get closer back to the normal of what life would be post-pandemic. That's how I see it. And I think the client is way more savvy. Clients had a lot of time to sit, to think, to look around, and to educate themselves as well.
Yeah, very well said. Perfect. And as I think about, and we kind of think about the hoteliers, you know, how should a hotel, you know, drive revenue today? And you know, with all the issues with it, you know, inflation. But if you had to give them direction and say, look, if I was in your shoes and you had to drive revenue, what would be your guidance to them?
Okay, before we drive revenue, let's just talk a little bit about hotels in general. And I think because I stay in a lot of hotels and I travel considerably, And the hotel room rates are higher than they've ever been. And I think a lot of people are trying to catch up for the last 20 months, which I don't always think is the smartest thing to do because of the value proposition, which I think is very, very important. And in many instances, the gym is not open, the spa was not open, the minibar was not open, the restaurants weren't open. What was the hotel industry giving back? We took all these things away, what we were giving you. And some of the things I've suggested, like, let's give you an array of foods in the minibar without charging you. Let's give you 2 splits of wine, some fruit chocolate and bag of chips, something, right? To make you feel that you are valued and enjoyed. We understand that why the gym wasn't open or why the spa wasn't open. Gyms are now open, a lot of spas are not open, some of the spas are open with limited treatments. But what is the hotel giving you back? We don't want to adjust the room rate because we know that that's a slippery slide. But I think there needs to be things that the hotels do to make us feel we're more valued as a client. I think that's important. I think customization now is more important than ever before because that is how you will drive value, of being able to customize the situation. So people feel like I'm not one of 500 people checking into this hotel. I'm Mr. Cowie checking in today. And how special can you make me feel? What are all the touch points that you can do along the way to ensure that I will talk about this reservation at my next 3 dinner parties? And I think so customization and personalization are very, very important today. We're also looking for specialization. So it's not just about, this is farm to table. We want to know this is farm to table. It's from Snake River Farms and it's this morning's egg. I think the vegan movement has become a very, very big offering today. The poor vegan man before used to get a grilled portobello mushroom or the vegetables without the protein. It's come a long way, and every great chef today has put together an extraordinary vegan menu. And I think I've seen the vegan movement grow so incredibly fast. And I think it's because people are looking for provenance, they're looking for quality, they have a lot of time to educate themselves. And it's about, as I said from the very beginning, all of this is how I make you feel. So no matter what hotel we're in, right, what are the things that I can look for opportunity to resonate with you that are really going to make your stay memorable? And it's the same thing again. I said this at the beginning of our conversation. I'm a big dreamer. I believe in dreaming big because big ideas give big results. But I think what we're delivering is the idea that we're delivering big, small. We don't want you to think that we're doing this for 100 people. We want you to think that we're doing this just for you.
Yeah, so it's very, very, very important. Totally agree. And I think, our perspective is very similar with our luxury brands and hotels. It's, prices are high now, particularly in the resorts in certain parts of the world. But it's all about, delivering on that brand experience for that individual brand and making sure that, the value's there and that we create sustained long-term loyalty to the brand when customers are there. And so that is not easy to do today for a lot of things that we've discussed so far. But the end goal is for customers to fall in love with the brand and to be loyal to it and want to go back and return and feel like the value proposition and what they paid for, they get more than that in a service delivery. And I think it'll be interesting, right now when the borders they're starting to open. I think we're going to see a pretty significant shift in how things move around the world when borders really start opening up, because it has been very constrained in certain markets where you're staying in your home country. And so, but when you can go to other countries, that's going to be very interesting dynamic on how that works. And then how I would think if somebody wants to go to Italy right now and you're in the US, what does that feel like? If somebody's in Germany and want to come to Miami, what does Miami feel like? Do they know what the cities and towns feel like? I think so. There's a lot of things that are going to evolve as we go forward here in the near future, which is going to be great. I mean, thrilling that the borders are going to start opening up. But I think that's going to change some of the dynamics in certain markets, which would be interesting to see.
I just spent a considerable amount of time this summer in Europe. And I said, let me just resign to the fact that flights are going to be late. They're not going to take off on time. It's not going to be a good experience. Just relax. I have to tell you, I had the most incredible experience. I never had a flight that didn't take off on time. Everybody was masked up. Everybody felt safe. Everybody felt secure. I think we're really ready for borders to open up. More than ever.
Yeah, And that's thrilling. It's exciting to hear, but that's what needs to be, for travel, that's what needs to be communicated. So it's great to hear that. And I can't wait to get to Europe. So I'll be there in less than 2 months. So my first trip back to Europe. So can't wait. Okay, so the next question is, Hotel Ave is forecasting group to recover to 85% of 2019 levels in 2022. How would you advise hoteliers to prepare for the return of events?
So I think the social events are well on their way back. I mean, I think we can see that, we can feel that, your people see that through all the bookings and the reservations, particularly from your banqueting point of view. But I think the group travel is going to take a while to come back, particularly the really, really big groups. I think, a lot of people have really worked and figured out how to communicate the way we're communicating right now. You cannot do this socially. You can certainly do it a whole lot more from a business point of view. So I would imagine as we get more and more confidence, groups will start to come back. I would imagine that's the next phase that will come back now that we're comfortable with social. And I think to be prepared for what's coming down the line, I would focus on the supply chain. I really would, because I see how it's affected everyone in every single industry. If the shelves are empty on the stores, that none of the Halloween decorations, if they're probably sitting outside of the water somewhere in Los Angeles or outside Miami or New York somewhere on a container trying to get unloaded, along with all the holiday deliveries and trying to order equipment and try to order furniture. And our interior design project that we're working on right now, went to order fabric, it was 26 weeks delayed, which is something I would have ordinarily had shipped within a week and a half. So finding product, I think, is the difficult one, and getting the supply chain up and running. I think that probably is the biggest challenge that we're having right now. But other than that, my advice is stand out in the crowd. How do I create a unique offering for you? How can I do something that my competitors are not doing? And I think therein lies the key, is to really look for that opportunity.
Yeah, fully agree. It's just don't transact the business, step above it and be creative and try to go above and beyond and personalize it, customize it, all the things we said. So it was great to speak to you today, and I want to thank you very much for all your valuable insights. It was all right on and perfect. So again, thank you very, very much for your time today, Colin.
Don, I had a great time chatting with you, and I wish you well and enjoy your trip to Europe soon.
I'm looking forward to it. So thank you again. And to close, we'd like to thank you all for joining the International Luxury Hotel Association's webinar series. If you found the webinar to be valuable, please do share the recording. Recordings of past webinars can be found on ILHA's website, theilha.com, under events. Thank you very much.